I now think that Hulk Hogan might have been the canary in the coal mine unintentionally for Charlie Kirk, because the same outrage conservatives had about people not being as sad as they were about Hogan's death happened with Charlie Kirk, but tenfold. Don't take the wrong lesson away from these reactions. Every time Dick Cheney or a Henry Kissinger or a United Healthcare CEO whose name we've already forgotten passes away, think about what really has value to you in this lifetime, because you have no control over your legacy after you're gone. You contribute to your legacy while you're here, and then it's up to everybody else. Human beings generally lack foresight, but lately American conservatives have been behaving like they're going to control the narrative forever, when the truth is that it's just their turn at the wheel, and everyone is going to remember that time they almost crashed the ship. You know, the problem with reactionary politics is that inevitably you wind up contradicting yourself and looking like a hypocrite. But Donald Trump fixed that aspect of conservatism by simply not giving a shit. Now conservatives can pinball from position to position, always rolling forward, never needing to acknowledge whether what they believe now can be reconciled with what they believed the day before. Now, one day you can be all about free speech, and the next you can silence your dissenters. You can claim to want to be a peacemaker and then declare war on your own citizens. You can be the new punk rock, an iconoclast who goes against the grain and thinks for themselves by scapegoating vulnerable, misunderstood people who are different from you. Because you, it doesn't have to make any sense anymore. Before Charlie Kirk died, conservatives, Charlie Kirk included, were pretending they had this amazing sense of humor and that nothing was off limits. They were all acting like Ugly Sonic from the Chip and Dale movie. You know, that was like a spiritual sequel to Who Framed Roger Rabbit. In that movie, Ugly Sonic, portrayed by Tim Robinson, pretends to go along with the joke in hopes of seeming unbothered and making the joke less impactful.
Oh, they're laughing at me. I know that. You can't hurt my feelings if I'm in on the joke.
Are you, though?
Yes.
Charlie Kirk and J.D. Vance pretended to be in on the joke when South Park made fun of them, and J.D. Vance also pretended to be in on the increasingly bizarre and whimsical J.D. Vance memes that, much like Ugly Sonic before him, take a guy who looks kinda weird and turn him into a surrealist nightmare. There was also Drewski putting on whiteface and a mullet wig to go to a NASCAR rally. The conservative response to this pretty much amounted to, haha, funny, see, we can laugh at ourselves, and also this should give us permission to do blackface again.
Here's the question. Ultimately, he went undercover. He went full Donnie Brasco.
Yeah.
How long could you go in total blackface and get away with it?
That's a good question, man.
And he did a little bit of reverse Soul Man. You're a child like me of the 80s and 90s.
Absolutely.
You remember the C. Thomas Howell movie?
Are you kidding me?
Soul Man.
Yeah.
Where he became black.
This act they were putting on was never going to last, especially because Trump is the main target and he's notoriously thin-skinned. He even had the White House complain about South Park on Twitter. Trump likes the idea of having a sense of humor about himself, but he has to be the center of attention. He has to have creative control in order to keep his image intact. He happily did stuff like Comedy Central roasts and SNL and Howard Stern, where he was the subject. But one look at Trump's visible discomfort during Obama's 2011 White House Correspondents' Dinner speech and his real feelings about being made fun of become evident. Dude is seething. He can't even pretend to enjoy it. And after Charlie Kirk's assassination, his administration tried to get Jimmy Kimmel fired for saying something he didn't actually say. More on that later. But yeah, it didn't work. Kimmel came back. Trump and his goons continue to complain about TV shows they don't like, while everyday people continue to get priced out of everyday life, regardless of who they vote for, if they voted at all. Conservatives love dishing it out and hate having to take it. Charlie Kirk's assassination only makes that more evident. The dark humor edgelords who made memes about George Floyd
I got a Derek Chauvin George Floyd memorial. Dude, that's insane.
are suddenly concerned about people's children being able to watch videos of their father's murder online. Forget about what you thought of him as a person.
In front of thousands of college students, this dude's life was taken. But as vile and evil and as disgusting as that was, what happened in the 24 hours after, when you saw a lot of people, including people in the entertainment space, the sports space, and the gaming space, celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, celebrating the assassination and the murder of Charlie Kirk? These are the people that f***ing hate you. They want you dead, clearly.
The same people that gave a white woman over $500,000 in crowdfunding for calling a child the N-word are now trying to get people fired for denouncing Charlie Kirk. Suddenly, people who pride themselves on pushing boundaries have a line they won't cross. In fact, now that their guy is the one dying in a way that nobody should, they've come down with a bad case of amnesia, and actually they have no idea where all this vitriol is coming from. They had absolutely nothing to do with creating this environment. According to them, the entire left just lost it one day, and we all got together to draw straws on who was going to take out the GOP's favorite talking head. This broad accusation at the entire span of the political left wing was transparently disingenuous, and it was a sharp and noticeable pivot from the usual standard GOP talking points following a tragic shooting, i.e., this guy was a lone wolf, this is a mental health issue, not a gun issue, but either way, don't politicize this, can't forget about thoughts and prayers, see you next tragedy. Mind you, Republicans never actually had any sort of game plan for improving the state of the public's mental health. Just eat some fries cooked in beef tallow, wash it down with a cane sugar Coke, put your jeans on, and take a dip in the sewage river, and it'll get your mind right as rain. But it was a solid deflection that served them well after many an untimely unaliving. And as shitty and ironically thoughtless as Thoughts and Prayers was, I miss it compared to whatever the f*** is going on now. This is a new goose stepping into the abyss type of GOP, and it was obviously very important for these people to have multiple different subgroups of scapegoat to choose from so that they can lump them together into a vague and nebulous party known only as they.
They took a shot at President Trump. They assassinated Charlie Kirk, and they crushed working families with inflation. President Trump needs backup. I'm Gino Bolso, and I'm ready to fight.
Conveniently enough for the GOP, the left wing has multiple different subgroups just ripe for the scapegoating. Charlie Kirk's job in all of this was to shift the Overton window just enough to make all the scapegoating seem more appealing to the average American citizen. And this is also the job of his contemporaries like his good friend Candace Owens, human jack-in-the-box Tucker Carlson, and InfoWars DEI hire Nick Fuentes. Although Charlie Kirk may be dead, making the unacceptable acceptable is still very much his job. Now he's being propped up by Republicans in a sort of metaphorical weekend at Bernie's as an excuse to justify silencing political opposition, despite the fact that letting his political opposition speak was Charlie Kirk's whole gimmick. Meanwhile, Kirk's close friends, fellow talking head Candace Owens included, didn't even speak at his memorial, which was run more like a political convention than a funeral. I guess there's no rest for the bigoted. Charlie Kirk got killed by some crazy white guy, but so far trans people have been targeted by politicians who continue to portray them as violent, riling up their base against an already vulnerable group of people. Black people have been targeted by white supremacists in the form of bomb threats and lynchings. Anyone expressing politically leftist views is considered a potential enemy of the state. 2 teenage girls were fatally run over by another crazy white guy because one of them, who he had been stalking, reposted a negative TikTok about Charlie Kirk. And unfortunately, I'm not so sure you're going to be hearing a lot about that story in the coming weeks on the news. Even if that story was making the rounds, it wouldn't be held against white men, and it wouldn't be held against supporters of Charlie Kirk. those people are in the safe zone, and everyone outside of it is subject to scrutiny. The world Charlie Kirk dreamed of is becoming a reality. People like him putting the us in US, and everyone else in the country is just a they. I don't know how much longer the bad time is supposed to last. Authoritarianism was already on the rise before Charlie Kirk was killed, but a conservative pundit being assassinated is far more convincing grounds for increased militarization than big balls from Doge getting beaten up by a 15-year-old girl. But just as a reminder, the initial justification for sending the National Guard into US cities was in fact that Doge employee nicknamed Big Balls was physically assaulted by a teenage girl. Bonkers, but true. As burnt out and overwhelmed as you may be feeling from all this, it's important to remember that the truth still does matter. It's the reason it's been so easy to disprove claims about Charlie Kirk having been this moderate conservative, a good faith debater, and a respectable communicator. Everyone already knows that those aren't qualities that tend to get a person clicks in the online political sphere. Pair that knowledge with Kirk's own words, and suddenly it's as if he's debating his own supporters from beyond the grave. They say his death was unjustified. I agree, but Charlie himself seemed to justify it when he said,
I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year, so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights.
They say no one should be able to watch a video of their loved one being killed, and I agree. But Charlie Kirk supported televised public executions.
By the way, this is my other problem with death penalty. It takes too long, too many appeals.
Expensive.
It should be public, it should be quick, it should be televised.
They call him a moderate conservative, which I did not agree, but neither did Charlie. He'd regularly talk about how he didn't support the Civil Rights Act, and about how he thought MLK was a bad person, unworthy of national celebration, and how he knew that these were not mainstream takes.
We note in our piece that Kirk describes King as, quote, a bad guy. It's true. And Kirk self-described very, very radical view that the country made a mistake when it passed the Civil Rights Act. Also true. I saw the right-wing intelligentsia saying, no, Charlie, it's a career ender. You don't do this. You just say MLK was awesome, and you don't ask questions, and you just kind of walk away. I said, I'm not going to do that anymore. I think that kind of attitude is destructive and wrong.
He expressed these takes for attention, and he repeated them to normalize bigotry. That's why the Jimmy Kimmel thing was so weird. It's weird how Jimmy Kimmel could get in trouble for something he never actually said about Charlie Kirk, but you're an asshole if you hold Charlie Kirk to the things he actually did say. So what I'm going to do here in the spirit of Halloween is I'm going to debate Charlie Kirk from beyond the grave. I know he can't defend himself, but trust me when I say I'm going to be a lot more fair than the criticisms you've been seeing lately. I want to be explicitly clear about what Charlie Kirk is saying with no wriggle room for misinterpretation. Some of the stuff I am seeing online put words in the guy's mouth, which is not only bad form in my opinion, it's not necessary. Charlie Kirk's words were toxic enough on their own without needing the slightest amendment. All changing what he said does is give his cronies wiggle room to pretend that what he actually said somehow wasn't hateful and derogatory. I get that sound bites hit harder than full statements. Ronald Reagan once famously said, if you're explaining, you're losing. But that's what I do. I lose and I explain things. And it's still Ronald Reagan around these parts. So, fair and square, let's pick apart 3 Charlie Kirk arguments real quick, including the final argument he was making before the final moment of his life. Also, Charlie Kirk covered a lot of stuff over the years, but because I'm a black person, all my examples are going to be about black people. Okay, let's get to it. Argument the first: black women lack mental capacity. Charlie Kirk did not literally say that black women have limited mental capacity.
Joy Reid and Michelle Obama and Sheila Jackson Lee and Ketanji Brown Jackson were affirmative action picks, we would have been called the racist. But now they're coming out and they're saying it for us. They're coming out and they're saying, I'm only here because of affirmative action. Yeah, we know. You do not have the brain processing power to otherwise be taken really seriously. You had to go steal a white person's slot to go be taken somewhat seriously.
What he was really doing here was purposefully misinterpreting what black women like Joy Reid, Michelle Obama, Sheila Lee, and Ketanji Brown Jackson are saying when they say that they wouldn't be where they are today without affirmative action. Affirmative action sought to address well-documented, measurable workplace discrimination against oppressed groups of people. The irony of Charlie Kirk saying things like he doesn't trust black women to fly planes is that these are precisely the prejudicial views that made affirmative action a necessity to begin with. So really all he did was prove that black women are damned if they do and damned if they don't. Discrimination from white males leads to legally mandated fair labor practices, and that leads to more discrimination from white males who just want Chad to fly their plane.
When I get on an airplane, you know, I want my pilot to be like, "Hi, this is Chad." Maybe like a little bit of a southern accent.
Chad Buckworth here.
You know,
No, Chad.
Lake is fine.
This is my 31,000th hour. I'm kind of bored, honestly.
Yeah, I could do this in my
Charles,
sleep. But
Exactly. I want just like cookie cutter, like.
pilot.
Yeah, this is so easy to me. I don't want LaQuisha James.
They have
who
that like
comes up,
pilot voice.
and she's just like, "Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Pray for me."
So, just another reminder of what Charlie Kirk thought was funny and cool. He had to pretend he thought that the South Park stuff was funny to save face, but in truth, his sense of humor was rooted way more in mocking groups of people that were different from him, and it was anything but self-deprecating. But hey, you get the picture. While Charlie Kirk absolutely implied that black women had low mental capacity by insulting the intelligence of some of the most accomplished black women in the country, because obviously if he's diminishing their credentials, he thinks even less of the average black woman, but explaining that takes too long. So you just say that he said black women are of low mental capacity, and then JD Vance can swoop in and say that it never happened. And technically, he's right.
He never said anything like that. He never uttered those words.
Plausible deniability, putting distance between yourself and the implications of your actions and words, is key to the Republican strategy. There's also a pilot shortage. The push to train women pilots isn't just optics, it's addressing a real problem. And there's no evidence of standards being lowered for pilots or any of these other institutions Charlie and his boys claim are hiring unqualified black women in place of qualified white men. Yet another case of, say it with me, conservatives being afraid of things that don't happen. So, while I don't blame anyone who misquoted Charlie Kirk on this one, I do want to illustrate how doing that sets you up for the conservative trap. Moving on. Argument number 2. Clarence Thomas and Thomas Sowell are better role models for the black community than Martin Luther King.
Thomas Sowell and Justice Clarence Thomas are far better black role models to celebrate than Martin Luther King. Period. End of story.
Here's what's always going to be wild about statements like this for me. Why do conservative white people always think they know better than us? We pick our leaders, we pick our heroes, we pick our causes, our slogans, and it's like some white people can't help but interject and try to fix what we're doing all the time for their own benefit. Their fixes are always conveniently something that makes white people more comfortable. Black lives matter. Oh, no, hon. All lives matter. See there? I fixed it for you. MLK, he talked about race maybe a little bit too much for my liking, actually. Here's Thomas Sowell. He talks about race too, but in a way that validates me. See, I fixed it for you, bud. It's like we can see what you're doing. It's very transparent. Conservative white people have done absolutely nothing to gain black people's trust. Why do they think they can just throw their 2 cents in and will consider what they're saying without expecting any ulterior motives? The fact is that conservatives have an immense amount of work to do ahead of them if they really want to endear themselves to the black community. And at this point in time, no one has any expectations of any of that work getting done on their part. Maybe figure out how to get a significant number of us to to vote for you. Republicans can't even run their own black candidates in black districts. Work on that before you start telling us our culture is toxic and broken.
There's also a cultural problem. There is, and we have to be honest about it.
It's just that black people are
No, let me ask you a question.
Like
the average music that a black person in Compton is listening to, is it about contemplating the good, the true, and the beautiful, or is it about being a gangbanger and trying to get as much money and sleep with about as many girls as you can?
I don't understand, like, the divinity of him tweeting that. Like,
I'm living in that 21st century. There's something mean to it.
I know why they talk about us like that, though. They're not actually talking to us. They're not talking to black people. They're talking to other white conservatives. The Republican Party has largely given up on appealing to black voters in any meaningful way. Any reference Republicans make to black Americans, positively or negatively, is rarely truly directed at black Americans. And that's why a lot of Charlie Kirk's takes could get so extreme. To guys like him, the views and opinions expressed by the majority of black people are completely irrelevant, because actually understanding black Americans means understanding racism, and understanding racism means understanding how white people fucked up in this country, and that is not the GOP branding. So Charlie Kirk paints MLK as a race hustler.
What I'm trying to counter is the reason we talk about race so much is because we have a federal holiday to a guy that talked about race all the time. We celebrate the Civil Rights Act more than the American founding.
So what? So is Thomas Sowell, and so was Charlie Kirk. He paints MLK as a cheater and a womanizer.
Martin Luther King was a self-described minister. He participated, at the very least, in dozens of extramarital affairs on his wife. That is well documented. He definitely participated in orgies. Martin Luther King, happy to go into it, very troubled past, well-known rapist, all that sort of stuff, right?
But so is Clarence Thomas.
Clarence Thomas, you were just elected the newest justice of the Supreme Court. What are you going to do now?
I'm going to Girly World.
Dreams come true.
And so is Donald Trump. And his claims that MLK was a rapist are just completely made up.
According to certain government documents, which again, they're FBI documents, so they might be real, they might not be, because we don't trust the FBI.
So ultimately, this argument and all of Kirk's arguments against MLK don't really make any goddamn sense when held up to a modicum of scrutiny. But the arguments are being made for people who already believe this stuff and aren't going to scrutinize any of it to begin with. Okay, now for the final argument.
Counting or not counting gang violence? Great.
Just before Charlie Kirk's untimely demise, he was debating political TikToker and mathematician Hunter Kozak about trans mass shooters. When asked how many mass shootings had occurred in the past decade, his response was counting or not counting gang violence, which would turn out to be his final words. So let's talk about gang violence and mass shooters. Charlie Kirk had to make the distinction here because most people don't even think of gang violence when they hear the term mass shooting. They rightfully think of a crazed madman determined to kill as many people as possible. But if you create a definition of mass shootings that focuses exclusively on the number of casualties and completely ignores the motives of the crime, suddenly it's very easy to pretend that mass shootings are a black problem. Before your opponent can say intellectual dishonesty, you're already successfully shifting the blame. But everybody knows that while gang violence might be the reason American schools wound up with metal detectors, it is not the reason American schools wound up with active shooter drills. Ignoring the motive allows grifters like Charlie Kirk to kill two birds with one stone. They get to further scapegoat black people while shielding white men from accountability when it comes to the culture that is creating these shooters. The fact of the matter is that gang violence, while absolutely unacceptable and abhorrent, usually involves rival gang members as specific targets. Gangsters often behave recklessly. Innocent bystanders get killed all the time. I've witnessed it personally. It's happened to family members of mine. Gang shootings are a horrific problem. But at the end of the day, the gangsters have a motivation for the crimes that they are committing that I can understand. Those motivations are symptomatic of larger societal problems. Money, territory, revenge. These are the motivators of gang violence. Gangs are not committing violence because they love violence.
People like Nick Fuentes and others will say, black people should be in prison. Well, let's look at the stats. Black people commit about 6,000 murders a year. 98% of it is against other black people. That's 6,000 murderers. There's 40 million black people that live in America. The overwhelming majority of black people are not murdering anybody. The chance of you getting struck by lightning is probably more than getting murdered by a black man. It's concentrated areas of poverty and violence. People that don't understand that because they never actually patrolled and lived anywhere other than some little small area where they only had negative experiences with black people, they really don't understand the totality of what we're really looking at here.
Spree shooters, serial killers, guys who go crazy and get it in their heads to harm as many people as possible for the sake of harming them. I cannot understand that. I really don't even think there's anything to understand. But it is a distinctly white male problem, especially among right-wing white men, and it feels like we are not allowed to acknowledge that or talk about it anymore. And that isn't going to help the problem. There is a problem with the way that we are socializing white men in this country. The Antioch High School shooter in Nashville, Tennessee, was a self-loathing black boy who was obsessed with white supremacy and was radicalized online by the far right, by content that was intended for young white males. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard white conservative talking heads like Charlie Kirk pontificating on the toxicity of black culture, seemingly oblivious to the fact that they are all part of a toxic pipeline of white supremacist content in safe spaces, rattling around in the heads of a great many of these mass shooters.
A whole generation had revenue models built on their insecurities. They told them to hate minorities instead of getting therapy.
And when I say mass shooters, I do not mean gangsters. I mean nut jobs with guns who are trying to kill as many people as possible because everyone knows that that's what a fucking mass shooter is.
These crimes are now spilling into the real world, and they have real world consequences. While these networks do not have a centralized hierarchy or a single ideology, they are prolific and are attracted to violent extremism, nihilism, sadism, Nazism, and Satanism. They are crime-fluencers and are motivated by anarchy and hurting others, with most of their victims preteen or teenage girls. Overwhelmingly, the perpetrators are young boys and young men from Western English-speaking backgrounds. And overwhelmingly, young girls are the victims, and they are being intimidated, exploited, and controlled. These groups have a similar culture to multiplayer online gaming culture, and they hunt, stalk, and draw in victims from a range of online platforms.
As far as the trans shooter part of the argument, I have a take on an earlier Patreon cut. It made me nervous. I talked to some trans friends. They understood the take. Special thanks to my art school homie Veronica. But I don't think I'm the delivery system for it. I'm also not weighing in on all the weird circumstances surrounding the investigation of Charlie Kirk's demise. I'll just say that I don't like the feeling of being an amateur conspiracy theorist, but Kash Patel's FBI has made an amateur conspiracy theorist of us all.
The FBI! We've got you surrounded! Ow, stupid teeth! I think I just bit my toe!
And as far as Ugly Sonic goes, JD Vance continues to lean into the memes. Oh well, it was fun while it lasted. It's kind of like when a brand starts posting a meme that everyone's been enjoying and having fun with, and then they ruin it.
What the heliante?
Body is tea.
Body is tea!
Let him cook.
But take it from a black person. We know a thing or two about having our trends turn cringe.
Bling bling, bling bling, bling bling, bling bling, bling bling.
Bling bling.
Bling bling.
Bling bling. Bling bling.
This should be inspiration to come up with something even better. And if they ruin that, do it again. That's the hustle. I mean, some of this stuff writes itself.
Erica, don't tempt me, girl. You looking all good in them leather pants like a couch.
But, like I said before, things don't have to make sense anymore. What's the sense in trying to make sense of it? I'm backing off of this kind of subject matter for a while. I'm going to focus on local stuff with my current local PBS job and just try to take some time to positively regenerate my brain with the things that bring me joy for just a little bit. I'd like to thank my patrons. You guys are true champions for still putting up with me trying to get my mojo back. I want to thank everybody who donated to my family's GoFundMe. We hit our goals and we're doing okay. My sister thanks you as well. I also wanted to thank my sister. She's been great. Our dad died and she bought me Chipotle. I love her. There will be more Charlie Kirk stuff. I helped FD work on some research for a Charlie Kirk video he's working on as well. Obviously, this is a weird moment. We all watched a dude that many of us are at least passingly familiar with die on camera. But the shock of that moment can't retroactively turn Charlie Kirk's legacy into anything positive. Unfortunately, the deeper I dug, the worse he got. I'll leave you with this. Charlie Kirk had problems with a lot of highly accomplished black people.
We are raising a generation of weak people like Simone Biles.
And of course, everyone knows that LeBron James chronically cheats on his wife, obviously. He's an NBA player.
I can name at least a dozen people more deserving in the 20th century of a federal holiday than MLK.
Oh no, imagine the world without Joy Reid. Imagine the world without Sheila Jackson Lee, or Michelle Obama, or Ketanji Brown Jackson. They think this is persuasive. You're gonna remove my appendix and you're a black lesbian.
You know who he was happy to endorse, though? A living Jim Crow stereotype named Cousin T.
Because we are here celebrating Black History Month, and we are forgetting that the racist woke left counseled Aunt Jemima. And they ruined her legacy. They counseled this black woman. I have all kind of flavors. I also have a fried chicken mix out now. I mean, I am making food great again.
CousinTees.com. Let's play the trailer. Play cut 76.
I stand with my brother, my favorite African-American brother, Elon Musk.
And I gotta end it there. You should maybe take a little break from the internet yourself after being subjected to Cousin T. I've been NickolasNameolas. Good luck out there. I'd like to thank $10 patrons Celeste Santiago, Bramblefish, Christopher Kolish, Mr. Honeycomb, Dina Cardi, Sunshine, Silly Goober, Lauren, Mike B, Bill, Turn to Page X, Michael, Alani, Mocha Medics, Francisco Rose, Beef, and Venom Kratos.